Imagine finding a small copper penny in your pocket that looks just like every other coin you have ever seen. Now imagine learning that this tiny piece of metal could be connected to one of the most important moments in American coin history. A moment when the United States Mint was racing against time, collectors were searching through rolls of coins, and a simple penny from 1964 suddenly became something people wanted to hold on to instead of spend. The coin we are talking about today is the 1964 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it may look ordinary. Millions of Americans have handled coins like this without thinking twice. But for collectors and coin hunters, this small coin carries a fascinating story about history, design, and the possibility that something very common can sometimes turn out to be surprisingly valuable. The Lincoln penny itself first appeared in 1909. It was created to honor President Abraham Lincoln, making it the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. On the front of the coin, known as the obverse, you see Lincoln's portrait facing right. Around him are the words "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the year the coin was made. The reverse design used in 1964 is the famous wheat ears design. Two wheat stalks curve along the sides of the coin, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. Above that appears the Latin phrase e pluribus unum, meaning out of many one. By the early 1960s, pennies had already been in circulation for more than half a century, and by 1964 the United States was experiencing a major coin shortage. People were saving coins, collectors were pulling them out of circulation, and the mint was under pressure to produce more coins than ever before. That is where the 1964 Lincoln penny comes in. 1964, the U.S. Mint produced enormous numbers of pennies to keep up with demand. The Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark under the date, struck more than 3 billion Lincoln cents that year. That number alone makes the 1964 D penny one of the most heavily produced coins in American history. Because so many were made, most 1964 D pennies are still very common today. But here is where the story becomes interesting. While the majority of these coins are worth only a few cents, certain versions with special characteristics can be worth far more. First, let's talk about the metal composition. The 1964 Lincoln penny is made from 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. That copper content gives the coin its rich reddish color when it is new. Over time, as pennies circulate through people's hands and pockets, they begin to turn brown. Collectors actually classify copper pennies into 3 color categories: red, red-brown, and brown. A fully red 1964 D penny that has been carefully preserved can be far more valuable than one that has darkened through circulation. Condition is one of the most important factors in coin collecting. Coins that were never used in everyday transactions are called uncirculated. These coins still have their original shine, known as mint luster. When a 1964 D penny survives in this condition, collectors become very interested. But condition is only one part of the story. The real excitement for collectors often comes from mint errors and unusual varieties. One type of error that collectors look for is a double die. This happens when the design on the coin is accidentally impressed twice during the minting process, creating a slightly doubled appearance in certain letters or numbers. When doubling is strong and clearly visible, it can dramatically increase the value of a coin. Another possible error involves the mint mark itself. During the 1960s, mint marks were still being punched into coin dies by hand. Because of this manual process, some coins ended up with mint marks that were slightly misplaced or even doubled. A 1964 D penny with a clear mint mark error can attract serious attention from collectors. There are also off-center strikes, where the coin design is not perfectly aligned with the blank metal disc. Some coins may appear partially blank on one side because the design missed its proper position during striking. While these errors were mistakes at the time, today they are often seen as treasures by collectors. Now let's talk about value. In most cases, a typical circulated 1964 D penny might be worth just a few cents above its face value. But when condition improves or an unusual feature is discovered, prices can rise quickly. Uncirculated examples with strong red color can sell for several dollars, sometimes even more depending on grading. When coins are professionally graded by organizations like the Professional Coin Grading Service or the Numismatic Guarantee Company, they receive a score based on their condition. The highest grades, often called mint state 65 or higher, represent coins with extremely sharp detail and very few marks. High-grade 1964 D pennies with bright red surfaces have sold for hundreds of dollars in specialized auctions. Even more valuable are rare error examples. Some collectors have paid hundreds or even thousands of dollars for unusual mint mistakes that make a coin unique. This possibility is one reason why many people still search through jars of old pennies today. But if someone believes they have a valuable coin, an important question comes up. How can you tell if your 1964 D penny is real and not altered or damaged? The first step is to examine the mint mark. On a genuine 1964 D penny, the small d appears below the date on the front of the coin. The letter should look clean and consistent with the rest of the design. Collectors also check the coin's weight. A genuine copper Lincoln penny from 1964 should weigh about 3.11 grams. If the weight is significantly different, it could indicate damage, corrosion, or possibly a counterfeit. Magnification is another helpful tool. With a small magnifying glass, collectors can examine the details of Lincoln's hair, the lettering, and the wheat ears on the reverse. Sharp, crisp details often indicate a higher quality strike. Another sign of authenticity is the overall color and surface texture. Genuine copper pennies have a particular look that experienced collectors learn to recognize. Beyond value and identification, the 1964 D penny also holds an interesting place in American coin history. The year 1964 came just before a major change in U.S. coinage. Rising silver prices were forcing the government to reconsider how coins were made. Within a year, silver would be removed from circulating dimes and quarters. While the penny itself remained copper-based at that time, the pressure on the mint during the early 1960s reflected a period of major transformation in American money. Another fun fact is that many people saved rolls of 1964 coins because they believed the year might become historically important. As a result, large quantities of 1964 pennies survived in relatively good condition compared to coins from earlier decades. Still, finding a perfectly preserved example today is not always easy. Most of the coins that circulated during the 1960s passed through countless hands. They bought newspapers, candy bars, and cups of coffee. Over decades, these everyday transactions slowly wore down the coin's surfaces. That is why collectors become excited when they discover a coin that looks almost untouched after 60 years. For many collectors, the appeal of the 1964 D Lincoln penny is not just about its potential value. It is also about the connection to history. This small coin was produced during a time of major cultural and political change in the United States. It circulated during the presidency of Lyndon B. Johnson, during the space race, and during a decade that would reshape American society. Holding a coin from that year is like holding a small piece of the past. Collectors love coins that combine history, beauty, and the possibility of discovery. The 1964 D penny offers all three. It is common enough that almost anyone might still find one, yet interesting enough that collectors continue to search for the best examples. Sometimes the most fascinating coins are not the rarest ones ever made. Instead, they are the coins that millions of people used every day, coins that quietly traveled through time without anyone noticing. So the next time you come across a penny dated 1964 with a small D beneath the year, take a closer look. Check the color, the shine, and the details in Lincoln's portrait. Look carefully at the mint mark and the lettering. Because hidden among billions of ordinary coins, there may still be a few extraordinary ones waiting to be discovered. And that is one of the greatest joys of coin collecting. The idea that something small, simple, and easily overlooked might turn out to have a remarkable story and a surprising value. The 1964 D Lincoln penny reminds us that history is often hiding in plain sight. Sometimes it sits quietly in a jar of spare change, waiting for someone curious enough to pick it up and take a closer look. Welcome back. Imagine pulling a small copper penny from your pocket change and discovering that it might be worth hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars. It sounds unbelievable, but for some collectors, this exact moment has happened. And one coin that continues to spark curiosity among coin hunters is the 1969 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks like any ordinary cent, but hidden within its history and tiny details is a story that keeps collectors searching through jars of old coins even today. The 1969 D Lincoln penny is part of the famous Lincoln cent series that began in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. This was the first regular circulating U.S. coin to feature a real historical person rather than a symbolic figure. By 1969, the design had already been familiar to Americans for 60 years. The front of the coin shows the calm profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner. On the reverse side, used from 1959 through 2008, you see the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., a tribute to the president whose image appears on the front. The small letter D on the coin tells us it was minted at the Denver Mint. During the late 1960s, the United States Mint was producing enormous numbers of coins to keep up with the growing economy and population. Millions of pennies were needed every day for circulation, and in 1969 the Denver Mint struck more than 2 billion Lincoln cents. With such a huge number produced, it might seem impossible that any of them could be rare or valuable. Yet coin collecting often proves that even common coins can hide extraordinary surprises. The 1969 D Lincoln penny was made primarily from a bronze alloy consisting of about 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This composition had been used for most Lincoln cents since the early 20th century, except for a brief change during World War II when copper was needed for military supplies. By the late 1960s, the warm reddish color of the copper cent had once again become a familiar sight in American pockets. Looking closely at the coin reveals several design details collectors appreciate. On the front, Lincoln's portrait faces to the right. Above his head appears the word Liberty on the left side, while the date 1969 sits to the right. Just below the date you will find the small mint mark D indicating Denver. The phrase "In God We Trust" curves along the top edge. On the reverse side, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly in the center. If you look carefully between the columns of the memorial, you can actually see a tiny image of the Lincoln statue inside. Along the top rim reads United States of America, while the phrase E pluribus unum appears above the building. At the bottom is the coin's denomination. 1 cent. Most 1969 D pennies are still worth only a few cents today. However, certain examples with exceptional condition or unusual minting characteristics can be far more valuable. The real excitement comes from collectors searching for coins that stand out from the billions that were produced. One of the most interesting things about coins from this era is the possibility of minting errors. These errors happen during the production process when something goes slightly wrong at the mint. Sometimes a coin might be struck slightly off-center. Other times the design may appear doubled, or parts of the image might look unusually thick or shifted. For collectors, these mistakes are not flaws but treasures, because they make a coin unique. Although the famous double die penny from 1969 came from the San Francisco Mint and does not carry the D Mint mark, many collectors still examine 1969 D coins closely for other types of errors. Some Denver minted examples show small repunched mint marks, die cracks, or striking irregularities. While these may not reach the legendary value of the San Francisco double die, certain error coins can still sell for impressive prices depending on their condition and rarity. Condition plays a huge role in a coin's value. Coins that spent decades in circulation usually show wear. The high points of the design become smooth, the color darkens, and small scratches appear from everyday use. But if a coin was stored carefully soon after it was minted, it might remain in what collectors call mint state condition. These coins often display bright copper luster and sharp design details that look almost brand new. High-grade examples of the 1969 D Lincoln penny have attracted the attention of collectors at auctions. Some certified mint state coins have sold for hundreds of dollars when graded at the very top levels by professional grading services. For a coin that originally had a value of just 1 cent, that kind of increase is remarkable. To understand why collectors pay such strong prices, it helps to remember how difficult it is for a coin to survive in perfect condition for more than 50 years. Most coins were used daily in stores, vending machines, and cash registers. Very few were set aside immediately after they were minted. As time passed, the number of pristine examples became smaller and smaller. If you think you might have a 1969 D penny worth examining, there are a few things to look for. First, check the date carefully. It should clearly read 1969, and the mint mark D should appear just below the date. Make sure the mint mark looks natural and properly aligned. Sometimes altered coins appear on the market where someone has tried to add or change a mint mark. Next, examine the overall condition of the coin. Look at Lincoln's hair, the bow tie, and the details of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse side. If these features are sharp and well-defined, the coin may have seen little circulation. The color is also important. Collectors often prefer coins that still show their original reddish copper tone rather than darker brown surfaces. Using a magnifying glass can help reveal small details. Look for unusual characteristics such as doubled lettering, cracks in the design, or slightly off-center images. These could indicate a mint error, which sometimes increases the coin's appeal to collectors. Another important step is verifying authenticity. Because valuable coins attract attention, there are occasionally counterfeit or altered pieces circulating in the market. If you believe you have a particularly sharp or unusual 1969 D penny, many collectors recommend sending it to a professional grading service. These companies examine the coin, confirm that it is genuine, and assign a grade based on its condition. Once graded, the coin is sealed in a protective holder, which can make it easier to sell or trade. There are also some fascinating facts about the era when this penny was minted. The late 1960s were a time of major cultural change in the United States. In 1969, humans walked on the moon for the first time during the Apollo 11 mission. That same year, millions of small copper pennies quietly entered circulation across the country. While astronauts were making history in space, ordinary coins like the 1969 D cent were being used to buy newspapers, candy bars, and cups of coffee. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design on the back of the coin was relatively new at the time. It had replaced the earlier wheat ears design in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. For nearly half a century, that image of the memorial remained on the reverse of the penny, making it one of the most recognizable coin designs in American history. Collectors today continue to search for high-quality examples of these coins. Some enjoy building complete sets of Lincoln pennies from every year and mint mark. Others specialize in mint state coins with beautiful color and strong luster. For them, finding a well-preserved 1969 D penny can be an exciting addition to a collection. There is also something special about the connection these coins create with the past. Every penny carries a story. It may have passed through countless hands, traveled across cities and states, and witnessed decades of everyday life. When a collector holds a 1969 D Lincoln cent, they are holding a small piece of American history. Sometimes the most valuable discoveries come from the simplest places. People have found collectible coins in old jars, family coin albums, and even loose change from the grocery store. The thrill of the hunt keeps collectors examining their pennies carefully, hoping to spot a detail others might miss. Even if a 1969 D penny turns out to be worth only a few cents, the search itself can be rewarding. Coin collecting encourages patience, curiosity, and attention to detail. It teaches us to appreciate objects that many people overlook every day. And that is exactly why this humble little coin continues to capture attention. With billions produced, the 1969 D Lincoln penny might seem ordinary. Yet hidden among those billions could be a beautifully preserved example or a rare mint error waiting to be discovered. For collectors and treasure hunters alike, that possibility is what makes every penny worth a second look. So the next time you receive a handful of change, take a moment before tossing those coins aside. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and almost tossing it aside without a second thought. The small, copper-colored, and looks just like thousands of others. But what if that ordinary-looking coin carried a quiet story from American history, and in certain cases, could be worth far more than 1 cent? Today, we're taking a closer look at the 1978 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that millions of Americans have handled, but very few have truly examined. The 1978 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin designs in United States history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. Before that moment, American coins almost never featured real historical figures. The arrival of Lincoln's portrait marked a major change in American coinage, and the design quickly became one of the most recognizable coins in the country. By 1978, the Lincoln penny had already been circulating for nearly 70 years. The coin still carried the classic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, originally designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner. Lincoln's calm profile faces the right side of the coin, with the word Liberty placed to his left and the year 1978 stamped on the right. Above his head appears the familiar motto, "In God We Trust." When collectors talk about the 1978 penny with no mint mark, they are usually referring to coins produced at the Philadelphia Mint. During this period, pennies made in Philadelphia typically did not include a mint mark. That means the absence of a letter under the date is not actually an error. It simply indicates that the coin was struck in Philadelphia, one of the oldest and most historic mints in the United States. In 1978, the U.S. Mint produced an enormous number of pennies. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck more than 5 billion Lincoln cents that year. At first glance, that might make the coin seem extremely common, and in many ways it is. Millions of these pennies passed through grocery stores, gas stations, vending machines, and banks all across the country. But within that ocean of ordinary coins, collectors began noticing something interesting. Certain 1978 pennies displayed unusual characteristics that made them stand out from the rest. Small differences in the way the coin was struck, tiny minting errors, and exceptionally well-preserved examples started attracting attention from coin enthusiasts. The 1978 Lincoln penny is made primarily of copper. Its composition is about 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This gives the coin its warm reddish color when freshly minted. Over time, many pennies darken or turn brown as the copper reacts with air and moisture. Because of this natural aging process, bright red examples from 1978 that remain in pristine condition are much harder to find today. The coin weighs about 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters across. On the reverse side, the design features the Lincoln Memorial, which was introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely at the memorial on the back of the coin, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln's statue sitting inside the building. That means Abraham Lincoln appears on both sides of the coin, a detail that many people never notice. Even though billions of 1978 pennies were minted, condition plays a huge role in determining value. Most examples that have circulated for decades are worn, scratched, or darkened. These coins are usually worth only a few cents above face value. However, coins that were preserved carefully, especially those graded in mint state condition, can be surprisingly valuable. Collectors use a grading scale to measure how well a coin has been preserved. On this scale, a mint state coin can range from MS-60 to MS-70. The closer the coin is to perfect condition, the higher the number. A 1978 penny graded MS-65, for example, may be worth several dollars. But when you move into the very highest grades, the value can increase dramatically. There have been auction sales where top-quality 1978 Lincoln pennies with no mint mark sold for over $100. In extremely rare cases, coins graded at the very top of the scale, with flawless surfaces and brilliant red color, have reached several $100s in collector markets. For a coin originally worth just 1 cent, that kind of increase always captures attention. Another factor that can make a 1978 penny valuable is the presence of minting errors. Coin errors happen when something unusual occurs during the production process at the mint. These mistakes can create coins that look slightly different from normal ones, and collectors often prize them because they are much rarer. One example is the double die effect. This happens when the design is accidentally stamped twice in slightly different positions on the coin die, causing parts of the lettering or numbers to appear doubled. On some 1978 pennies, collectors have reported subtle doubling on the date or the word Liberty. When the doubling is strong and easy to see, the coin can attract serious interest from collectors. Another possible error is an off-center strike. This occurs when the blank coin planchet is not perfectly aligned when it is struck by the press. As a result, part of the design may appear shifted toward one side, leaving a blank curved area on the opposite edge. Depending on how dramatic the shift is, these coins can be worth significantly more than normal pennies. There are also examples of 1978 pennies with die cracks or cuds. These are raised lines or blobs on the surface of the coin caused by small fractures in the metal dies used to stamp the design. While minor cracks may not add much value, larger or more unusual ones can turn an ordinary coin into an interesting collectible. If you think you might have a valuable 1978 penny, there are a few simple steps you can take to examine it. First, look closely under the date. If there is no letter present, that means it was minted in Philadelphia. Next, check the overall condition of the coin. Does it still have a bright reddish color, or has it turned brown from years of circulation? You should also inspect the lettering and numbers carefully using a magnifying glass. Look for signs of doubling, unusual shapes, or parts of the design that seem misaligned. Even small details can sometimes make a difference in value. Weight can also be an important clue. A genuine 1978 penny should weigh very close to 3.11 grams. If the coin is significantly lighter or heavier, it could indicate damage, alteration, or in rare cases, an unusual minting error. One thing collectors always warn about is cleaning coins. Many people believe that polishing or cleaning an old coin will increase its value. In reality, cleaning almost always reduces a coin's worth. Collectors prefer coins that remain in their original, untouched condition, even if they show natural aging. There are also a few fascinating details about the Lincoln penny that most people never realize. For example, the Lincoln cent was the first American coin to include the motto "In God We Trust" as part of the main design. Over time, it became such a familiar sight that many people hardly notice the phrase anymore. Another interesting fact is that the Lincoln Memorial design on the reverse remained in use for nearly 50 years. From 1959 until 2008, it appeared on billions of pennies, making it one of the longest-running reverse designs in American coin history. The year 1978 itself was also an interesting time in the United States. The country was experiencing major cultural changes, new technology was emerging, and everyday transactions still relied heavily on cash. Pennies moved constantly through the economy, changing hands thousands of times as people bought groceries, paid for gas, or dropped coins into parking meters. Because of this constant circulation, very few coins from that era survived in perfect condition. Most were worn down through decades of use. That's why collectors today pay such close attention to the rare examples that remained untouched. For many coin collectors, the appeal of the 1978 no-mint mark penny is not just about money. It's also about the thrill of discovery. The idea that a small coin hiding in a jar, drawer, or old piggy bank might hold unexpected value is something that keeps people searching through their change. Even today, collectors still examine rolls of pennies from banks, hoping to find high-grade coins or unusual mint errors that others may have missed. It's a hobby that combines history, patience, and a bit of luck. The 1978 Lincoln penny reminds us that every coin has a story. It passed through countless hands, witnessed everyday moments, and quietly carried a piece of American history through the decades. So the next time you come across a penny from 1978 with no mint mark, take a moment before you spend it. Look closely at its color, its details, and its condition. What appears to be an ordinary coin might actually be a small but fascinating collectible. Because sometimes, the most overlooked coins in our pockets turn out to be the ones with the most interesting stories. And somewhere out there, a single penny could still be waiting to surprise the person who finally decides to take a closer look. Imagine pulling a simple penny from your pocket and discovering that this tiny copper coin could hold a story that stretches across decades of American history. At first glance, it looks completely ordinary. But the 1979 Lincoln penny with no mint mark is one of those coins that quietly hides interesting details, small variations, and collector curiosity that many people overlook every day. The Lincoln penny is one of the most familiar coins in the United States. It has been part of everyday American life for generations. The version we are talking about today is the 1979 Lincoln cent with no mint mark, a coin that millions of Americans have probably handled without giving it a second thought. Yet collectors still search through jars, old piggy banks, and pocket change hoping to find special examples of this very coin. To understand why the 1979 penny matters to collectors, we have to go back to the long story of the Lincoln cent itself. The design first appeared in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first regular United States coin to feature a real historical figure rather than a symbolic image. The portrait of Lincoln facing to the right was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, and his design remained largely unchanged for decades. By the time 1979 arrived, the Lincoln penny had already been circulating for 70 years. The country had gone through wars, economic changes, and cultural shifts, but the penny remained a constant presence in everyday transactions. In 1979, the United States Mint continued producing billions of Lincoln cents to meet the needs of the economy. The coins that do not carry a mint mark were produced at the Philadelphia Mint. For most of the 20th century, coins struck in Philadelphia simply did not use a mint mark. That means when you see a 1979 Lincoln penny without any letter under the date, it usually means the coin was minted in Philadelphia. During that year, the Philadelphia Mint produced an enormous number of pennies. In fact, billions were struck, making the coin very common in circulation. But even though the overall number is high, collectors still search for exceptional examples because condition, small varieties, and rare minting mistakes can make certain coins surprisingly valuable. The design of the 1979 Lincoln penny follows the classic style known as the Lincoln Memorial Reverse. On the front of the coin, you see the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln. Above his head appears the word Liberty. The year 1979 sits to the right of the portrait. The national motto "In God We Trust" is written along the top edge. On the back of the coin, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly in the center. If you look closely at well-preserved examples, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the memorial between the columns. Above the building are the words United States of America and the motto E Pluribus Unum. Along the bottom is the denomination 1 cent. Another interesting detail about the 1979 penny is its metal composition. At that time, the coin was made mostly of copper. Specifically, it contained 95% copper and 5% zinc. This gives the coin its warm reddish color when it is new. Over time, exposure to air and handling can darken the surface, giving older pennies their familiar brown appearance. While millions of these coins circulated normally, collectors pay special attention to coins that remain in excellent condition. A 1979 penny that looks almost untouched, with bright original color and sharp details, can be far more desirable than a worn example that spent years in circulation. But condition is only part of the story. Collectors are also fascinated by minting errors, and even a very common coin like the 1979 penny can sometimes display unusual features created during the production process. One of the types of errors people search for is a double die. This happens when the coin's design is accidentally impressed twice at slightly different angles during the creation of the die used for striking coins. The result can be visible doubling on letters or numbers. When such an error appears clearly on a coin, collectors often consider it a fascinating variety. Another possible minting mistake is an off-center strike. This occurs when the blank coin planchet is not perfectly positioned inside the press when it is struck. Part of the design might appear shifted toward the edge, leaving a blank curved area on the opposite side. The more dramatic the shift, the more interesting the coin becomes to collectors. There are also cases of coins struck on the wrong type of metal planchet. Although extremely rare, these unusual errors can create coins that weigh slightly different or look unusual compared to normal examples. When authenticated by experts, such mistakes can attract serious attention in the collector market. Because so many 1979 pennies were produced, the majority of them are worth only their face value. However, collectors and coin dealers know that special examples can sell for much more. For instance, a 1979 penny in uncirculated condition with strong red color can sometimes sell for several dollars, especially if it has been professionally graded and preserved. Higher-grade coins that appear almost perfect under magnification can command even stronger prices. In some cases, certified examples graded at the very top of the scale have sold for dozens of dollars at auction. The exact value depends on condition, color, and collector demand. Error coins can be even more interesting. A clear double die or dramatic off-center strike from 1979 could potentially sell for significantly higher amounts depending on how visible and unusual the error is. Some collectors specifically build collections focused entirely on mint errors, making these coins highly desirable. So how can someone tell if they have a genuine and potentially valuable 1979 penny with no mint mark? The first step is simply to examine the coin carefully under good lighting. Look closely at the date area. If there is no letter beneath the year, that indicates it was produced in Philadelphia. Next, observe the overall condition. Coins that still show bright red copper color and very little wear are often more collectible than darker, heavily circulated coins. The sharper the details on Lincoln's portrait and the Lincoln Memorial, the better the potential value. It can also help to use a small magnifying glass or coin loupe. This allows you to inspect the lettering and numbers closely. If you notice unusual doubling, strange alignment, or other unexpected details, the coin might be worth showing to a professional coin dealer or grading service. Weight is another clue collectors sometimes check. A standard 1979 Lincoln penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If a coin is significantly heavier or lighter, it could indicate an unusual minting situation, although damage or wear can also affect weight. Another tip is to compare the coin with known images of authentic examples. Collectors often study reference guides or online coin databases to learn what normal coins should look like. This makes it easier to notice unusual features that might increase a coin's value. One fascinating fact about the Lincoln Memorial design is that it allowed both sides of the coin to feature Abraham Lincoln. The portrait is on the front, and the statue of Lincoln inside the memorial appears on the reverse. This makes it one of the few coins in the world where the same historical figure appears on both sides. Another surprising detail is how long the Lincoln Memorial design remained in use. It lasted from 1959 until 2008, nearly 50 years. That means the 1979 penny belongs to a long and stable era of American coin design that many collectors remember from childhood. For many people, searching through pennies is not just about money. It is about discovery. Every coin carries small marks of history, from the year it was minted to the journeys it may have taken through countless hands, pockets, and cash registers. Collectors often describe the excitement of finding an unusually well-preserved coin in a roll of ordinary pennies. That moment of recognition, when something looks just a little sharper or brighter than the rest, can spark a deeper interest in coin collecting. The 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln penny may not be the rarest coin ever produced, but it represents an important part of everyday American history. It is a reminder that even the smallest coins can connect us to the past and encourage curiosity about how money is made and used. For experienced collectors, coins like this offer endless opportunities to study condition, varieties, and subtle details. For beginners, it can be the perfect starting point because examples are easy to find and affordable to collect. And that is one of the most appealing things about coin collecting. You never know when an ordinary-looking coin might turn out to be something special. A penny that once bought a piece of candy decades ago might imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering that the small copper coin you almost ignored might actually be worth far more than 1 cent. For many people across the United States, that moment of curiosity has sparked a lifelong interest in coin collecting. And sometimes, the most ordinary-looking coins can hide fascinating stories. One such coin is the 1988 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that millions of people have handled without realizing the history and surprising value it can sometimes hold. The 1988 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, one of the most recognized coins in American history. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln, the Lincoln cent replaced the earlier Indian head penny and quickly became a familiar part of everyday life in America. By the time 1988 arrived, the Lincoln penny had already been circulating for nearly 80 years, passing through countless hands in stores, banks, and households across the country. 1988 penny, without a mint mark, was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. For many decades, coins struck in Philadelphia were not marked with a letter indicating their origin. That means when you see a 1988 penny with no letter under the date, it usually means it came from Philadelphia. In that year alone, the Philadelphia Mint produced billions of Lincoln pennies, making the coin extremely common in circulation. At first glance, that might make it seem like there is nothing special about it. But as many collectors know, the story of a coin does not end with how many were made. Sometimes it is the small details, the tiny differences, and the rare mistakes that turn an ordinary coin into something collectors become excited about. The design of the 1988 Lincoln penny is simple but iconic. On the front, known as the obverse, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing right. This design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and has remained one of the longest-running coin designs in United States history. Above Lincoln's head are the words, "In God We Trust." To the left of his portrait is the word liberty, and the year 1988 appears to the right. Turn the coin over, and you will see the reverse design that was used from 1959 until 2008. This side shows the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C. If you look very closely between the columns of the memorial, you can actually see a tiny figure of Abraham Lincoln sitting inside. It is one of the smallest presidential portraits ever placed on a circulating coin, and many people never notice it unless they use a magnifying glass. The 1988 penny was made primarily from copper-plated zinc. Since 1982, the United States Mint had switched the composition of the penny to mostly zinc with a thin copper coating. This change was made because the cost of copper had increased, and producing pennies from solid copper was becoming too expensive. As a result, the modern penny became lighter and slightly different in color compared to older copper cents. Now, while most 1988 pennies are only worth face value, the reason collectors pay attention to this coin is because of certain rare variations and mint errors that can appear. One of the most famous varieties connected to the 1988 Lincoln penny is something collectors call the 1988 reverse of 1989 variety. At first, this might sound confusing. How could a 1988 coin have a design from 1989? The answer lies in the complex process of making coin dies. Each coin is struck using a metal die that carries the design. Occasionally, a die prepared for 1 year may accidentally be used earlier or later than intended. In the case of the 1988 penny, a small number were struck using the reverse design that was supposed to be introduced the following year. The difference between these two reverse designs is subtle, but collectors who study coins closely can identify it. The most noticeable difference appears in the lettering of the words United States of America and the designer's initials near the bottom of the memorial. On the reverse of 1989 design, the spacing and style of certain letters are slightly different compared to the standard 1988 version. Because this variety was not widely known at first, many examples circulated unnoticed for years. Some may still be sitting in jars, drawers, or old coin collections today. Another reason collectors examine 1988 pennies carefully is the possibility of mint errors. Mint errors can occur during the striking process when something unusual happens in the machinery or the dies. These errors can include off-center strikes, double designs, or unusual planchets. A double die error, for example, happens when the die used to strike the coin receives a slightly doubled image during its creation. This can cause parts of the design, especially letters or numbers, to appear doubled when the coin is struck. On certain Lincoln cents, double die varieties have become extremely valuable, sometimes selling for thousands of dollars depending on the clarity of the doubling and the condition of the coin. While the 1988 penny is not famous for dramatic double dies like some earlier Lincoln cents, collectors still search for subtle doubling and other irregularities that might increase a coin's value. When it comes to market value, most circulated 1988 no-mint mark pennies are worth only 1 cent. However, coins in exceptional condition can be worth more to collectors. A 1988 penny graded in high mint state condition, meaning it has never been used in circulation and still shows sharp details with minimal marks, can sometimes sell for several dollars or even more depending on demand. The real excitement comes with the rare reverse of 1989 variety. When one of these coins is discovered and verified by professional grading services, it can bring significantly higher prices. Some examples have sold for hundreds of dollars, and particularly well-preserved specimens have reached even higher values at auction. This is why collectors and hobbyists often search through rolls of pennies or old jars of change. The possibility that a small, overlooked detail might turn a common coin into a valuable collectible keeps the hunt exciting. If you want to check whether you might have a valuable 1988 penny, the first step is to examine the date and the area below it. If there is no mint mark, the coin was struck in Philadelphia. That alone is normal, but it confirms you are looking at the correct type. Next, take a closer look at the reverse side of the coin. Comparing it with images of the standard 1988 reverse and the reverse of 1989 design can help you spot the differences in lettering and spacing. Many collectors use a magnifying glass or a digital microscope to study these tiny details more clearly. Condition also plays an important role. Coins that have bright, original surfaces, sharp lines, and minimal scratches are always more desirable. Even a common coin can become more valuable if it has been preserved in outstanding condition for decades. Another useful tip is to weigh the coin. A standard copper-plated zinc Lincoln penny from this era should weigh about 2.5 grams. While this will not identify the reverse variety, it helps confirm that the coin has the correct composition and has not been altered. One fascinating fact about the Lincoln cent series is that it was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. Before 1909, American coins usually displayed symbolic figures such as Lady Liberty rather than actual individuals. The introduction of Abraham Lincoln's portrait marked an important shift in American coin design. BY 1988. The Lincoln penny had already witnessed many historical changes, from world wars to economic shifts and advances in minting technology. Every small coin carries a piece of that history. Another surprising detail about the Lincoln Memorial reverse is the tiny statue of Lincoln inside the building. Many people have handled these coins for years without realizing that Lincoln appears on both sides of the penny. Once you know it is there, it becomes a fun detail to show friends and family. Collectors today continue to enjoy searching for Lincoln pennies because they are accessible and affordable. Unlike rare gold coins or expensive silver dollars, pennies can still be found in everyday change. That means anyone can begin exploring the hobby with coins they already have. The 1988 no-mint mark Lincoln penny represents exactly why this hobby remains so popular. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary coin that millions of people have seen. But with a little curiosity and careful observation, it can reveal hidden variations, interesting history, and the possibility of unexpected value. Some collectors build entire collections around small varieties like the reverse of 1989 penny. Others simply enjoy the thrill of the hunt, searching through rolls of coins from banks or sorting through jars that have been sitting untouched for years. And every once in a while, someone discovers a coin they never expected to find, so the next time you come across a 1988 penny, take a moment before you spend it. Look closely at the date. Turn it over and study the design. You might just be holding a small piece of American history, a coin that traveled through decades of commerce and daily life before ending up in your hand. Because in the world of coin collecting, even the smallest coin can carry a story far bigger than its 1-cent face value. And sometimes, the difference between an ordinary penny and a remarkable discovery is simply the decision to look a little closer. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering that this tiny copper coin could be far more interesting than you ever expected. Most people overlook pennies every day. They pile up in jars, disappear into couch cushions, or get tossed into tip trays without a second thought. But sometimes, a penny quietly carries a story that connects history, design, and the curiosity of collectors. One coin that often sparks that curiosity is the 1991 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, the 1991 Lincoln penny might seem completely ordinary. It's small, brownish in color, and it features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln that Americans have seen on the 1-cent coin for generations. Millions of these coins were produced and released into circulation across the United States. But within that massive production, certain examples of the 1991 penny have drawn attention from collectors who carefully examine every detail. The 1991 Lincoln penny belongs to the long-running Lincoln cent series, which first began in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. Before that time, U.S. coins usually featured symbolic figures like Lady Liberty. But in 1909, for the first time in American history, a real person appeared on a circulating coin. The design by sculptor Victor David Brenner introduced a right-facing portrait of Lincoln on the front, while the back displayed 2 wheat stalks framing the words, 1 cent. This design became known as the wheat penny and remained in production until 1958. In 1959. The reverse design changed to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The wheat stalks were replaced with an image of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. If you look closely at those coins, you can even see a tiny figure of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. That Lincoln Memorial design remained on the penny for decades, including the year 1991, so the 1991 penny continues this long tradition. On the front, also called the obverse, you see Abraham Lincoln's profile facing to the right. Above his head is the word Liberty, and in front of his face is the national motto, "In God We Trust." The year 1991 appears to the right of Lincoln's portrait. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly in the center, with United States of America across the top and 1 cent along the bottom. Now here is where many people become curious. Some 1991 pennies have a small letter under the date, while others do not. That tiny letter is called the mint mark. It tells you where the coin was produced. In 1991, pennies were primarily made at 2 United States mint facilities. Coins produced in Denver carry a small D mint mark. But pennies produced in Philadelphia traditionally did not include a mint mark during many years of the Lincoln cent series. So when you see a 1991 penny with no mint mark, it usually means it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. For many collectors, this detail sparks the first question. Is a 1991 penny without a mint mark rare? The answer is both simple and surprising. The Philadelphia Mint produced billions of pennies in 1991. In fact, more than 4 billion Lincoln cents were struck there that year. Because of that enormous number, most 1991 pennies without a mint mark are considered common coins. They circulated widely across the country, passing from person to person in everyday transactions. However, even within such a large production, small variations and minting mistakes can make certain coins far more interesting to collectors. The U.S. Mint produces coins using powerful presses that stamp metal blanks with engraved dies. When everything works perfectly, the result is a clean, uniform coin. But occasionally, something unusual happens during the minting process. For example, collectors sometimes search for coins with doubling in the letters or numbers. This occurs when the die that strikes the coin shifts slightly, creating a doubled appearance on parts of the design. On a 1991 penny, doubling might appear in the date, in the word liberty, or in the motto "In God We Trust." If the doubling is strong and clearly visible, collectors may pay a premium for that coin. Another feature collectors watch for is off-center strikes. This happens when the blank coin is not positioned perfectly in the press. As a result, part of the design may be missing while another area shows extra blank space. These off-center coins can be dramatic and are often saved by collectors. The metal composition of the 1991 penny is also an interesting part of its story. Earlier Lincoln cents were made mostly from copper. But in 1982, the U.S. Mint made a major change. Rising copper prices forced the mint to switch to a different material. Since that time, most pennies have been made from a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper. The 1991 penny follows this modern composition, containing mostly zinc with a small copper plating that gives it that familiar reddish color. Because the copper layer is thin, many older circulated examples of the 1991 penny show signs of wear or discoloration. You might notice darker tones, small scratches, or faded details. But coins that remain in excellent condition can still catch the attention of collectors. Condition plays a huge role in coin value. When collectors evaluate a coin, they often look at how sharp the details are. Is Lincoln's hair clearly defined? Are the steps of the Lincoln Memorial visible on the reverse? Are the surfaces clean and free from heavy damage? Coins that look almost brand new, even decades after being minted, can be worth significantly more than heavily circulated examples. Most 1991 pennies without a mint mark are worth only their face value when found in everyday change. But coins in exceptional condition can sometimes sell for several dollars, or even more if professionally graded. Grading companies evaluate coins on a scale that measures preservation and visual appeal. A high-grade 1991 penny that appears nearly perfect can become desirable among collectors who build complete sets of Lincoln cents. There have also been cases where unusual mint errors increased the value dramatically. A well-struck error coin from 1991, especially one with strong doubling or a major striking mistake, can attract competitive bidding among collectors who specialize in mint errors. While these examples are not common, they remind collectors that even modern coins can hold surprises. So how can you identify a genuine 1991 penny with no mint mark and determine whether it might be worth keeping? The first step is simply checking the date and the area under the year. If there is no letter there, it likely means the coin was minted in Philadelphia. Next, look carefully at the coin under good lighting. A magnifying glass can help reveal small details that are difficult to see with the naked eye. Pay attention to the lettering and numbers. Are they sharp and even, or do you notice unusual doubling? Look at the edges of Lincoln's portrait and the details of the memorial on the back. Any unusual patterns or striking differences could indicate a mint error. Weight can also provide clues. A standard 1991 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams due to its zinc core. If a coin appears unusually heavy or light, it could be worth further investigation. One of the most enjoyable parts of coin collecting is the possibility of discovery. People have found valuable coins in pocket change, old jars, and family collections. While most 1991 pennies will remain ordinary circulation coins, the thrill of checking them is part of what makes coin collecting so engaging. There are also a few fun facts connected to the Lincoln penny that many people do not realize. For example, the Lincoln cent has been produced longer than any other design in United States coin history. Since its introduction in 1909, it has gone through several reverse designs but has always kept the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design used on the 1991 penny was the first U.S. coin to show the same historical figure on both sides. If you look closely at the memorial, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln sitting inside the building, meaning Lincoln appears twice on the same coin. Collectors today continue to search through rolls of pennies, hoping to find coins with exceptional quality or unusual errors. The 1991 penny without a mint mark is a reminder that even common coins can become part of a larger historical story. It connects the legacy of Abraham Lincoln, the craftsmanship of the U.S. Mint, and the curiosity of collectors who enjoy exploring the details hidden in everyday change. For many people, collecting coins begins with something simple: a single penny found in a drawer, a coin that looks slightly different from the rest, or a date that sparks curiosity. Over time, that curiosity can turn into a deeper appreciation for the history and artistry behind the coins we use every day. So the next time you see a 1991 penny without a mint mark, take a moment to look at it closely. It may not be worth a fortune, but it carries the legacy of more than a century of American coinage. And somewhere among the billions of pennies produced, there is always the possibility that one small coin holds a detail waiting to be discovered. Because sometimes the most ordinary coins tell the most fascinating stories. And the next great discovery in coin collecting could be sitting quietly in a handful of spare change. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and almost tossing it aside without a second thought. Now imagine that same penny quietly holding a story that stretches back decades. A story that collectors and coin hunters still talk about today. What if that ordinary coin in your hand was a 1994 Lincoln penny with no mint mark? A coin that many people have seen but very few have truly looked at closely. The 1994 Lincoln penny is one of those coins that most Americans have handled at some point in their lives. It doesn't look flashy. It doesn't immediately stand out. In fact, millions of them were produced and circulated through everyday transactions. But within that large number lies a fascinating piece of American coin history that still captures the attention of collectors. To understand this coin, we first need to understand where it came from. The Lincoln penny itself has been part of American currency since 1909, when it was introduced to honor the 100th anniversary of the birth of President Abraham Lincoln. It was the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real historical person rather than a symbolic figure. The design quickly became one of the most recognizable images in American money. By the time 1994 arrived, the Lincoln penny had already been in circulation for 85 years. The design on the front of the coin still showed the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. Lincoln's calm and thoughtful profile faces to the right, surrounded by the words "In God We Trust" above, "Liberty" on the left side, and the date on the right. The back of the 1994 penny featured the classic Lincoln Memorial design. This reverse design had been used since 1959, when it replaced the original wheat ears design to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely at the Lincoln Memorial on the coin, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln's statue inside the building. That detail makes the Lincoln penny one of the few coins in the world to show the same person on both sides. Now let's talk about the mint mark, because that is what makes the 1994 no mint mark penny interesting to collectors. In the United States, coins are produced at different mint facilities. The most well-known are Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Each mint typically marks its coins with a small letter indicating where they were produced. A D mint mark means the coin was made in Denver. An S mint mark means it came from San Francisco. But when a coin has no mint mark at all, it usually means it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. That is exactly what we see with the 1994 penny without a mint mark. It was struck at the historic Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest mint facilities in the country. Philadelphia produced a huge number of pennies in 1994, sending them out into circulation across the United States. At first glance, that might make the coin sound common. And in many ways, it is. But collectors know that even common coins can become fascinating when you start looking closer at the details. The 1994 penny is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This composition was introduced in 1982 when the price of copper rose high enough that the metal inside older pennies became more valuable than the coin itself. To reduce costs, the U.S. Mint switched to a zinc core with copper plating. Because of this change, the 1994 penny weighs about 2.5 grams. Earlier copper pennies, made before the change in 1982, weighed about 3.11 grams. That small difference in weight can help collectors identify different types of pennies. Another interesting detail is the coin's color. When new, the 1994 penny has a bright copper red shine. Over time, exposure to air and handling can darken the surface to a reddish-brown or even deep brown color. Collectors often describe pennies as red, red-brown, or brown depending on how much of that original shine remains. Condition plays a huge role in the value of any coin, including the 1994 no-mint mark penny. Most of these coins spent years moving through cash registers, vending machines, and pockets. Because of that, many examples today show wear, scratches, and discoloration. But occasionally, collectors find coins that were never heavily used. These coins may still display sharp details and bright surfaces, especially if they were saved early or stored in coin rolls. That's where things start to get interesting. A typical 1994 penny with no mint mark that has been circulated is usually worth just a few cents. However, when you find one in extremely high-grade condition, the value can climb much higher. Professional coin grading services evaluate coins based on their condition using a scale from 1 to 70. The higher the number, the better the condition. Coins graded in the upper mint state range, especially MS67 or higher, can be surprisingly valuable. In recent years, collectors have seen exceptional examples of the 1994 no-mint mark penny sell for well over $100 when they are preserved in near-perfect condition. In rare cases, top-quality coins graded at the highest levels have sold for several $100s at auction. Another factor that can increase the value of a coin is the presence of mint errors. Mint errors happen during the coin production process. Sometimes the metal planchet is struck slightly off-center. Other times the dies that stamp the coin develop cracks or doubling that create unusual patterns in the design. On some 1994 pennies, collectors have reported minor double die features, where parts of the lettering or numbers appear slightly duplicated. While not extremely dramatic, these varieties can still attract attention among coin enthusiasts. There are also cases where the copper plating on zinc pennies develops bubbles or small breaks. This happens when the thin outer layer separates from the metal underneath. While this is technically a type of error, it usually does not increase value unless it is unusually dramatic. If you want to identify a real 1994 no-mint mark penny, the process is fairly simple. Start by looking at the front of the coin, just to the right of the date. That small space is where a mint mark would appear if the coin were struck in Denver or San Francisco. If there is no letter in that location, the coin was made in Philadelphia. Next, check the overall design. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln should appear sharp and well-defined, even if the coin shows some wear. The lettering around the edges should be clear and evenly spaced. Weight can also help confirm authenticity. A genuine 1994 penny should weigh close to 2.5 grams because of its zinc composition. If a coin is significantly heavier or lighter, it could be altered or damaged. Another tip is to examine the edge and surface for signs of tampering. Sometimes people attempt to modify coins to create fake errors or unusual varieties. Genuine coins should show consistent metal color and texture across the surface. Beyond the technical details, there are also some fun and surprising facts about the Lincoln penny series that make coins like the 1994 example more interesting. For one thing, the Lincoln penny is the longest-running coin design in U.S. history. From its introduction in 1909 all the way until 2008, the front portrait remained largely unchanged. That means generations of Americans grew up recognizing the same familiar face on their smallest coin. Another fascinating detail is that billions of pennies were produced each year during the 1990s. The United States economy was growing rapidly at the time, and the demand for small change remained strong. Pennies were used everywhere, from grocery stores to parking meters. Despite their small value, pennies have become one of the most popular coins for collectors to search through. Many people enjoy the thrill of looking through jars, coin rolls, or pocket change hoping to discover something unusual. Sometimes that search leads to rare varieties or extremely well-preserved examples that others overlooked. collectors today still appreciate the 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln penny for several reasons. It represents a specific moment in modern American coin production. It also belongs to a series that nearly every American has handled at some point in their life. For some collectors, building a complete Lincoln penny collection means gathering coins from every year and mint. That includes Philadelphia coins like the 1994 no-mint mark example. Others focus on finding the highest quality versions possible, searching for coins that look almost exactly the way they did the day they left the mint. And of course, there is always the excitement of discovering an unexpected error or variety hidden among ordinary coins, so the next time you see a penny dated 1994, take a moment before you spend it. Imagine finding a single penny in your pocket change that most people would ignore without a second thought. It looks ordinary, worn from years of circulation, and easily forgotten. But what if that simple coin quietly carried a story that connects American history, modern minting technology, and a growing community of collectors searching for hidden value? Today we are taking a closer look at the 2002 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that millions of Americans have seen but very few have truly examined. At first glance, the 2002 Lincoln penny seems like just another small copper-colored coin. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But collectors know that every penny tells a story, and even modern coins like this one can hold surprising interest. The phrase no mint mark often causes confusion, especially for people who are just starting to explore coin collecting. The truth is that the 2002 penny without a mint mark was actually produced at the Philadelphia Mint. For many decades, the Philadelphia Mint did not place mint marks on Lincoln cents. While other mints like Denver use the letter D and San Francisco uses the letter S, Philadelphia traditionally left the coin without any letter at all. So when you see a 2002 penny with no mint mark under the date, it simply means it came from Philadelphia. To understand this coin better, we need to step back and look at the long history of the Lincoln penny. The Lincoln cent first appeared in 1909 to celebrate the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. It was the first American coin to feature a real historical figure instead of a symbolic image. Over the decades, the design changed several times, but Lincoln remained the central figure on the coin. By 2002, the Lincoln penny had already been circulating in the United States for more than 90 years. The reverse side at that time still featured the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. For generations of Americans, this design became one of the most recognizable images on any coin. The 2002 penny was produced during a period when the United States Mint had already changed the composition of the coin. Earlier Lincoln cents, especially those made before 1982, contained mostly copper. But rising metal prices forced the mint to change the formula. By 2002, the penny was made from a zinc core covered with a thin layer of copper. This gave the coin the same familiar appearance while reducing production costs. Even though millions of these coins were produced, collectors still pay close attention to them because modern pennies can sometimes contain interesting minting errors or unusual varieties. The Philadelphia Mint produced billions of pennies over the years, but certain coins stand out because of small differences that occurred during the minting process. One of the things collectors look for on a 2002 no mint mark penny is condition. Most pennies spend years moving from hand to hand, rubbing against other coins and surfaces. Over time, the original shine fades and small scratches appear. But if a 2002 penny somehow avoided heavy circulation and still shows its original bright surface, collectors may classify it as uncirculated. Coins in this condition can be worth much more than face value. Another feature collectors examine closely is the strike quality. A well-struck coin will show clear details in Lincoln's hair, the lettering, and the fine lines of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse side. Sometimes coins are struck slightly off-center or with weak pressure, creating small variations that collectors find fascinating. In some cases, small minting errors can turn an ordinary penny into a coin worth saving. For example, collectors search for doubled letters, off-center strikes, or small die cracks. These errors happen when the dies that stamp the coin develop tiny imperfections during the production process. When such errors appear on a coin, they can dramatically increase collector interest. Although the standard 2002 no mint mark penny is extremely common, certain high-grade examples have still attracted attention among collectors. A coin that has been carefully preserved, with its original red color and minimal marks, can receive a high grade from professional grading services. When a coin earns a top grade, collectors often compete to add it to their collections. There have been examples of 2002 Lincoln pennies graded in near-perfect condition that sold for noticeably higher prices than most people would expect from a single cent. While the majority of circulated coins are worth exactly 1 cent, pristine coins have been known to sell for several dollars, and in rare cases even higher when the grade is exceptional. For new collectors, identifying a genuine 2002 no mint mark penny is actually quite simple. Start by looking at the front of the coin. Just below Lincoln's portrait, you will see the date 2002. Directly under the date, check for a mint mark. If there is no letter at all, that indicates the coin was produced in Philadelphia. The absence of a mint mark is normal for this mint during that period. Next, examine the coin's surface carefully. A genuine coin will have clear lettering that reads, "In God We Trust," across the top and "Liberty" to the left of Lincoln's portrait. On the reverse side, the Lincoln Memorial should appear in the center, with the words "United States of America" and